Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vikram. I teach sociology at La Excellence. What is today's agenda? Today's agenda is to try and familiarize you with two things. One is, I'm assuming that most of you are still wondering which optional to go for, right? Big question before every UPSC civil services aspirant. The idea today is to first try and help you figure out how to choose an optional, right? First thing. Second, to tell you something about sociology option, right? Now, this is not a marketing session. So my job here is not to push you all by hook or crook into sociology optional, because many of you may be investing 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, we don't know, into this journey. And choosing the right optional, right? It is the most important step, most important and the first step on your UPSC journey. All right. Why? As many of you know by now, you have this essay paper. Has about 250 marks. Then you have GS 1, 2, 3, 750 marks. You have your ethics paper, 250 marks. And you have your optional, 500 marks. All right. Now, what is our aim? Our aim is to find our names in the final selection list. That is the aim, right? Around 750 approximately positions that we are all fighting for. 15 lakh people apply for this exam. All right, 15 lakh people apply for this exam, out of which around 9 lakhs download the prelims hall ticket. Okay, so 6 lakh students simply apply, they never download their hall tickets. Out of this, 6 lakhs turn up for your prelims exam. All right, out of this 6 lakhs, something like 12,000 give the mains exam. 3,500 give the interview, and there are 750 names in the final list. ये भी है बात कि you've studied so hard not to become a railway traffic engineer. Isn't that correct? You don't want a job in postal service, no? What do we want? We want this. First preference. Not happening, at least this. Not happening, at least this. Final option. Very sad. Let's take it, IRS. Everything below this, nobody cares. It's just a job. Like any job, like a private sector job, it's just a job, nobody cares. Out of the 750, only the top 250 get this. Right? Isn't that correct? If you're studying so hard, spending so much money, all right, you've just started on this journey, it's going to be difficult, very difficult. Now, if you're putting in so much effort, you want this. How do you get there? Right? Nobody gets IAS or IPS or IFS for that matter on the strength of this, no. Ironically, most students spend their lion's share of time, effort, energy on these three papers, GS 1 to 3. Okay. You don't get in, you don't become an IAS based on your GS 1 to 3 marks. No. These are important parts of your examination, because the average mark of the student who usually gets into the list is about 100 here, okay? It's about 100 here. They get about 100 out of 215 each of the papers. And if you actually plot the marks of all the students who get in, there's a lot of clustering around this score. It's not the case that somehow you will get 150 in your GS1 paper and you will get a 50 mark lead. That will never happen. That will never happen. Okay? People cluster around this score. So this is a minimum. 100 you have to get in your GS1 to 3. That is 100, 100, 100, 300. Essay. Here, the scores of those who get into the final list vary between 125 to 155. It varies between 125 to 155. If you write a good essay, all right, there are 2 essays in your paper, and if you are able to write 2 good essays, basic but good essays. Okay. Now, what is a good essay? That is for another day. Okay. If you write 2 good essays, you can get 155. If you write 1 good essay, you get about 140. If you write average essays, you get 125. Okay. So here there is a scope for you to get a 30 mark lead over your competitors, right? So compared to your GS 1 to 3, this becomes important, because every competitive examination is a relative examination. It's not about how much you know. It's about how much more you know than your competitor, right? That's what it is. In this ethics paper, it varies between 90 to 110. Now forget about 2019. It was an exceptional year where they awarded marks left, right and center in ethics paper. Some students got 160, 165. That doesn't happen again. Okay. So once in a blue moon kind of a thing. Here you have a chance to get a lead of 20. All right. Now look at this optional paper. It has 500 marks. Here, the scores vary between 275 to 325. Okay. So you have a chance to get a 50 mark lead here. You have a chance to get a 50 mark lead here. One thing. Second is that, say in your GS papers, you get around 100 out of 250, right? This is the score. This is something that you get. Now look at comparatively in your optional, you get something like 155 by 250, 165 by 250. This is the score that is quite possible. If you plan well, this score is possible. In fact, I know someone who's just passed out of engineering, BTech from a good college, one of the IITs. He studied only 3 months. He didn't get into the service because obviously he didn't do well in the other papers. But he got 305 in sociology optional just with 3 months preparation. All right. So it's possible that you can get a 50 mark lead in your optional paper. Okay, get this in your head first of all. Now the question is that if this is the case, why do people focus on GS 1 to 3? Because you need GS 1 to 3 to pass your prelims examination. You need GS 1 to 3 to pass your prelims examination, but it will never get you your rank. All right. One thing. Second mistake that students do. Let me pass prelims first. Okay. Common attitude, escapist attitude. Let me pass prelims first, then I will think about mains. What will you do if you pass prelims? Will they give you some badge of honor that you can wear around and roam around in Domalguda like this? No, right? Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you pass prelims or not. 2016 AIR1 Tina Dabi, she passed prelims by 0.5 marks. Just passed. How much more did she get in her mains examination? She got around 60 marks more than the second ranker in the mains examination, the written exam. She got AIR1. People know Tina Dutt. There's one person in this institute itself. Every year he gets some 125, 135 in prelims. Cutoff is 96, okay? Who cares? No one cares. Alright? So, the most important thing for you as young students, freshers who are starting on this journey, don't focus purely on prelims at this stage. This is the stage where you have to prepare for your mains examination. This is the stage where you have to prepare for your mains examination. The first 6 to 8 months is where you have to prepare for your mains examination. Just because the examination happens in a certain chronology does not mean that your preparation will also happen in that chronology. No. First you have to prepare for mains examination. And on that count, this particular batch is at a advantage. Why? Because all of you are giving in 2022, right? You have a lot of time. This is a once in a generation thing that happens, that somebody is getting so much time within one UPSC cycle to prepare. Make the best use of it. Make the best use of it, right? So, how do you start? You start with your optional. Do your coaching for GS, whatever. You learn some polity, history, geography. Learn it. Learn it. Your focus in the first 6 months of your preparation should be on your optional. If you pass prelims examination, God forbid, if you pass prelims examination and you have not done your optional syllabus, then the entire year is completely wasted. Because the thing with this optional is that if you prepare, you get 325. If you don't prepare, you get only 180. This is also there. If you don't prepare, you get only 180. It's not like you get some average. Here, if you don't prepare, you get 80. If you don't prepare also, you'll get 80. If you know how to write a structured answer, if you can draw some diagrams, there are certain hacks for this GS mains examination. Here, there are no hacks. Here, you must know the subject. Here, you must know the subject. You must have adequate practice before you enter the examination hall. Adequate practice in the sense that as someone who has given the mains examination, you will not get a second to think in the examination. That is the problem with this exam. It won't be the case like your universities that you will sit and think for 5 minutes, then you will recall and write. No. You don't get even 1 second to waste in the examination hall, and that means that you are basically writing from your subconscious memory. So imagine the kind of practice you need to write like that. Alright? So start with your optional preparation first thing. Moving on. We have established that we have to study optional. How do we choose an optional subject? Fall into 3 main buckets, okay, or 3 main categories. One is the most popular, what are called social science optionals. The second bucket is your science optionals. Science, engineering, medicine. These options. Third bucket are what are called literature. I'll come to social science in a minute. There are some myths regarding, very funny myths regarding optional subjects. All kinds of things. They say that suppose if you take Telugu literature optional, the person who is correcting your paper is also a Telugu guy, right, normally. So maybe he will award you more marks. That is one myth. Telugu literature optionals are very easy. Another, because the syllabus copy, they look at the syllabus copy, the length of the syllabus copy is less. In some optionals, for example, if you take sociology optional and print out the syllabus copy, it runs into some 4 pages. If you take anthropology, it runs into only 2 pages. So they conclude that anthropology has lower syllabus compared to sociology. extremely dumb things to do. Okay, that's not true. It's not. First of all, forget that if your native language person is correcting your paper, he will somehow award you more marks. They won't do it. 100% they won't do it. Okay. Then it is also a myth that the size of the syllabus in this literature optionals is less. That is also not true. All right. In fact, if you take a literature optional, the greatest disadvantage is that you have to actually read from the original text. Okay, there are certain novels, poems, whatever that are given in the syllabus. You have to read the original and you have to make your own notes, because the person who is correcting your paper will know if you have copied it from coaching material. Okay, these literature people will know. Okay, because the language will be same, expression will be same, everything will be same, right? Okay, that is the biggest disadvantage. All right. Other than that, there is one disadvantage with this, which is the reason why most people don't opt for these subjects, is that it has no overlap with your GS syllabus. It has no overlap with your GS syllabus. Maybe it will improve your writing skills. If you are giving the exam in, say, the same language for your GS papers, it may improve your writing skills, but it has no overlap with your GS papers, right? Now, who should take literature optional? If you want to take, say, Kannada literature, you must have a natural interest in Kannada literature for over a decade. For the last 10 years, you have really taken interest in Kannada literature and you have actually studied something in Kannada literature. Then go ahead and take it. It will benefit you. I'm 100% sure there is nobody here like this. Okay? This is not the crowd which would have interest in literature, that too 10 years back. Am I right? Forget this. There's one big advantage of taking science, engineering, mathematics, these subjects, because here the answers are objective. There's a question. If you solve the question, the answer is either right or wrong. All right? The answer is either right or wrong. It's objective. Okay, that's the very, very big advantage when it comes to mains examination, right? So the scores can really shoot up if you take science, engineering, medicine options, particularly mathematics. If you take this optional, your scores can really shoot up. All right. But there is a problem, two problems. One problem is that no overlap with GS papers. 3 problems. Second problem, proper coaching not available. Guidance is not available. Test series not available. Okay. Third problem, your engineering education. Most of you may have gone to engineering colleges where you have namesake engineers. Right? They're all namesake engineers. I know what happens in an engineering college. Everything other than engineering, right? Suppose you've gone to a somewhat namesake type of an engineering course, don't take it. This is for students who have natural interest in engineering, mathematics, these kind of subjects, and they have attended a good college where they were forced to study to pass. I know how this JNTU, this engineering students pass, okay? But that's not the case. Suppose if you go to IIT Delhi, for example, right? You are forced to study to pass in these institutions, all right? And they must have prepared for some GATE examination simultaneously, right? So it is those kind of students who will benefit, okay? So if you have, see, there is no shame in accepting it, okay? Because it's not our doing. That engineering educational system is in shambles in this country is not our fault. All right. So there's no shame in accepting that we are all somewhat poor in science. Okay. Maybe we were never interested in science. Okay. But sab kar rahe, hum bhi kar lete. Okay. So choose this wisely. Choose this wisely. Ask yourself. Be honest. Be honest. Ask yourself. Look at the syllabus. Look at previous year's questions. Are you able to solve them? If you put in some efforts, will you be able to solve them? That is the question that all of you must ask yourselves And if the answer is yes, I encourage students to go ahead and take science engineering option. Okay. Because the scores can be high here. Social science, the most popular. Suppose 10,000 students give UPSC mains examination, around 8,000 students give with social science options. Right? That's 80%. Why? Many reasons. Overlap with general studies syllabus, first. Big advantage. Big advantage. Right? If you take sociology optional, your essays will look different, your GS1 papers will look different, your ethics answers will look different, everything looks sociological. And that will be rewarded. That will be rewarded. If you take PSIR, you will have a different kind of a spin on all the questions. If you take philosophy, there is a different kind of a spin on all the questions, right? So the big advantage with taking a social science optional is that it prepares you for your overall UPSC journey. It prepares you for your overall UPSC journey. First big advantage. Second, great coaching support. Okay. Social science optionals usually have great coaching support in terms of the material that is available, in terms of the classes that are available, in terms of test series that you can avail, right? So somehow the system has been hacked with respect to the social science options. That is, a good teacher can tell you what to prepare and how to get that 300 score. All right. Now within the social science, again, so there's no time to speak about all the optionals one by one. Some popular ones: sociology, anthropology, PSIR, geography, public administration. Most famous. Top 5 options. These are the top 5 options. Same reason. If you take these optionals, their overlap with your GS syllabus will be the maximum. Their overlap with your GS essay ethics preparation will be maximum if you take these options. Some students actually opt for philosophy. This is also fine. But philosophy has the problem of material. Alright? You can ask some students who have given mains exam with philosophy optional. There is a problem with material in this philosophy option. Right? Let us remove some optionals from this so that we can speak about fewer number of optionals, right? And this is only my estimation, my perspective, okay? Don't take it too seriously. Public administration. Very large number of students actually give UPSC examination with public administration optional, right? But I tell my students to avoid this optional. Kyun? Because the breadth of the syllabus in this optional, right, it's mind-boggling. The kind of material you have to read for this optional is mind-boggling. I know some very bright students who have taken about 14 to 16 months to actually finish reading this optional. Okay, so the breadth of this optional is like a lot. So I tell my students to avoid taking this optional, but there's an advantage also with public administration. It has the most overlap with your GS syllabus. So that's the trade-off. You spend more time doing your optional, but then you would have to spend proportionately less number of hours doing your GS syllabus. All right. But generally speaking, I kind of tell my students to avoid this public administration optional. Why? Because in my view, the way questions are framed in this optional, in the final examination, right, it's very confusing. The way they frame questions. And most of the questions are like this. They give you a very complex statement and they add comment. You don't know who said it, what is it about, what is the context, you don't know anything. And they just say comment, discuss like this. And most students actually find it very difficult. Now there is this our Anudeep, 2017 topper. He actually said that all these years he was flunking his mains examination because of this public administration option. Right? That is why I shifted to anthropology. That is what he said. Okay. But UPSC has strange ways. 1 year later, one public administration person is All India rank 1 this last year. Okay. So, but generally to have a basic idea as to how to choose your optional, public administration in my view is not a, I should not be saying this, it's being recorded obviously, but I feel that the breadth of this syllabus is unmanageable in my view. Geography, take this optional if you have a photographic memory. Alright, that is if you are able to easily remember stuff. There are some students like this. If you show them a diagram and if you give them 15 minutes, they can replicate that diagram without seeing. If you have that kind of a memory, go for this geography option. Now some students are good with facts but they are bad with thinking. They cannot think critically, they cannot think logically, but they are good with facts. They can memorize. They can memorize easily, right? So if you are that kind of a person, this optional is for you. All right. PSIR is a very, very interesting optional. Those who take PSIR forget about getting a rank, they enjoy a lot in their optional class. Okay, because it gives you great perspectives to reason about international relations, reason about the politics around you. But the problem with this PSIR optional is that the questions look very simple when you look at them in the examination hall. Everybody knows them. Everybody knows them. But to get marks is so difficult. Because when everyone knows the answer and all the answers are copy paste from one popular madam's notes. Okay. They are all copy paste. The problem is that it becomes very difficult to differentiate your answers from the rest. So there's a lot of clustering in this average 240, 250, 240, 250. That is the problem with this. All right. So let us remove these options. Most of the people who have ended up in a sociology pre-course orientation class are actually worried about or confused between these two. How many of you are confused between sociology and anthropology? Can we have a raise of hands? I'm doing this for a long time now, I know. Okay. The problem is that they don't know what is the difference between these two subjects. Okay. They don't know what is sociology, what is anthropology. That is the reason why we have a pre-course. Okay. That is the reason why we have a pre-course. Both are fine. They have lot of overlap. Very popular rankers. Right? Some rankers become popular because they are very savvy on YouTube, Twitter like this. You can market themselves well. Very popular rankers have these optionals. All India toppers. Many selections every year. Forget about the top 100. We are all bothered about what people in top 100 are saying. We just neglect the others. They are also IAS, IPS only. Okay. Within the top 500, there are a lot of people who have sociology, anthropology. Very, very good conversion rate. Okay, we need some objective metric, right, to speak about which optional to choose. Anthropology, sociology have a good conversion rate. They have a good conversion rate, so particularly in second and third attempts. Okay, it's only here and there that people are able to clear this exam in the first attempt. Even if they clear, they don't get the rank and service that they need. So they end up writing again. Particularly in the second and third attempts, sociology and anthropology have good conversion rates. Okay, that is the biggest advantage, and that is what we are worried about, right? What is the conversion rate of an optional subject? We are worried about that. All right. So they have very good conversion rates, sociology and anthropology. Forget about smaller optionals, right? Like 3 people write with some language and one gets the rank, and that is 33.33% conversion. Forget about that. Take a larger sample size and see the conversion rate of these two optionals is very, very high. Okay. The only reason that is enough to choose, okay, actually speaking, but go back and see the recorded sessions of the pre-course for anthropology also, so that you can get an idea as to what this optional is. What are the advantages of taking this sociology optional? Syllabus is short. This is actually short, okay? This is not like This is not like the length of the syllabus sheet is short. No, it's actually short. Compared to all the other optionals, the syllabus is actually short. Then you will find excellent material for your paper 1. You will find excellent material in the market for your paper 1. Alright. Very big advantage. You will find good test series in the market. Check. Alright. Then
paper 2 overlap with paper 1.
yes. This essay that we were speaking about, every year one question is directly from sociology syllabus. Directly. 125 marks. If you have studied your sociology syllabus well, then you can ace that 125 mark essay. It's directly from the sociology option. Patriarchy, modernity, fulfillment of new women in India, ye, wo. Then it has a lot of overlap with your GS1 paper in terms of your history syllabus as well as your Indian society syllabus. Then in your paper 2, it has overlap with issues such as education, health, population, this kind of developmental issues, right? It will give you perspectives to write great answers so that you can differentiate your answers from the rest. Alright? Then in your third paper, issues such as land reforms, agriculture, again it will give you perspectives to write great answers. In your ethics paper also, Weber, okay, all this discussion around bureaucracy, what are the dysfunctions of bureaucracy, this will definitely help you to write better answers in your ethics paper. Alright? So, this overlap is one of the most underappreciated factors while considering sociology option, right? Why is it underappreciated? Because the overlap is not with respect to your prelims. And most students are like stuck in this enigma of passing prelims examination. That is why they don't see this overlap at the main stage. Alright, so these are the advantages. What are the disadvantages? There are disadvantages also. Paper 2 of sociology optional, it's very vague and wandering. Very vague and wandering. What is going to be asked, you don't know. The syllabus is written in such a way that it is somewhat open-ended. They can ask you anything. They can ask you anything. It's open-ended. Alright? One problem. Second is with respect to first is with respect to the syllabus. Second is with respect to notes. While for your paper 1, you can get excellent notes. In fact, there are such concise notes in the market that you can actually revise. Once you have understood everything, you can revise the whole optional in 3 days, okay? Because you get 5 days gap between your GS and optional paper. You have such wonderful notes in the market that you can revise the entire optional properly only in 2-3 days if you have read well beforehand. Whereas for this paper 2, you have to make your own effort. You have to make your own effort to write down your notes in that concise format. Obviously, you will have support. Our aim is to magnify these positives and reduce these negatives, particularly with respect to this. This is how we want to differentiate ourselves. There is one very famous institute, I don't want to take names, considered the Makkah of UPSC preparation in Delhi. There is one very senior professor, all respect to him. He takes a 6-month sociology optional class, okay? He covers exactly 40% of second paper. 40 to 50%. Some newer, more intensive coaching institutes, 70% maximum. Maximum. Okay? They'll tell you, this is all current affairs. You read by yourself. It is not current affairs because There is clearly written in the question that you are supposed to write a sociological analysis of that thing. Suppose there is something called as maternal mortality rate. Maternal mortality rate is something, okay, whatever it is, we'll find out later. Write a short note on maternal mortality rate from sociological perspective. That is what this is. What the coaching people tell you is that this you have read in your GS, right? It is the same thing. If you write the same thing, you will get half the marks that you are supposed to get. Alright? So that brings us to the next challenge. How to do sociological analysis of commonplace things. Commonplace things, right? Small stuff. For example, recently, if you have noticed, there is some Me Too movement that went on. They asked in the examination, sociological analysis of Me Too movement. What has it achieved? What has it not achieved? If you simply write that Me Too movement is so and so, so and so. In India, there is a POSH Act. POSH Act does not recognize sexual harassment which happened 90 days, more than 90 days back. If you write these kind of GS type points, you won't get marks. There are certain specific sociological points that you are supposed to write. How do you develop that acumen, that intelligence, that aptitude, okay, that sociological aptitude, so that whatever commonplace thing that you see in your life, how do we write sociologically about it? All right, how do we write sociologically about it? A lot of sociology is actually like this. Sociology, both in our first paper and second paper, we study family, right? You must be thinking, what is there to study in family? All of us have it. We know what is a family. What is there to study? There is a lot to know. There is a lot to know. Okay? That is, sociology as a subject is about providing uncommon explanations about commonplace phenomena. Things that are not immediately apparent to a layman's mind. Things that are not evident immediately. Sociology is a subject which seeks to provide the missing links. The missing links. All right. Tries to tell you what is missing in your analysis. You must develop that aptitude to sociologically analyze commonplace phenomena. That is the biggest challenge in this paper too. Okay. It's a challenge, but it's not an insurmountable challenge. You can learn. There are obviously shortcuts, hacks to do this. But once you get that knack of analyzing the sociological dimensions of any phenomena, most of your paper 2 is done actually. Because anyway, most of the things that they are going to ask you in this paper 2, you would have read for your GS. It is just that you need to do the sociological analysis of this. Some theoretical tools, some conceptual tools, some writing skills, that's it. That is what you need in this sociology option. Alright? Don't take sociology optional if you are lazy here. Okay? I will remember rather than understanding. If that is your approach, go for another option. Okay? Because I have not come across even a single student who started with this approach and found sociology interesting or fruitful in the entire UPSC journey. Okay? Try to think. If you are ready to think a little bit, if you are ready to think a little bit, invest some energy, learn to write, learn to think, then go for sociology option. We saw the rewards are very high. You need to cross these hurdles. Alright? Somewhat it is clear? Are you able to follow what I am trying to tell you? Okay? Fine. Okay, some engineering student here. Tell me, what is your basic perception of what is sociology? You want to tell me? Yeah. Human behavior. Okay, very heavy. Human behavior, loaded word. Okay. Next, anybody else?
Social issues.
Social issues, such as you mean problems.
Yes.
Social problems, study of social problems. Yes, anybody else? Huh?
Understanding society. Systematic.
Very vague.
Systematic study of society.
Very vague. What is this society?
Family.
Huh? Families. So family is the basic unit of society. That is what you are trying to say. So family, because family is the basic unit of society. Okay. Anybody else? One by one, yeah? Who is saying institutions here? Huh? What is this, sir? Institution, the meaning of this word? Tell me. Go ahead. You're right, tell me.
Any organized system, like education system or religion.
Any organized system. Okay, okay. Try. 1 second, he's speaking. Try, you're in the right direction.
Any organized system that impact society, like religion.
Okay. Religion is an institution, correct. Education is a type of social institution, correct. Okay, yes. Fine, good, good.
Thinking in society.
Sorry?
What is the people thinking in the society?
Thought process. Good. Yes. Anybody else wants to try?
Social atrocities.
You mean social problems, right? Some atrocities, problems. Okay. Anybody else? How people deal with social problems like this? Okay. All right. This is not wrong. It's not wrong. Not right either, okay? Some interesting things. Whenever we start thinking about anything social, right? Anything social, it's very natural for people's imagination to start thinking about problems. In society, there are some problems, you have to study those problems, and that is the job of a sociologist. Sociologists are not concerned about social problems. Sorry to disappoint you. They may say something about social problems. They may tell you something about social problems, why there is a problem, or how do you address this problem. All right. In fact, this idea of a social problem is within the genes of sociology, right? Sociology emerged out of a concern to deal with social problems in Europe. We'll discuss that when we do the syllabus. But sociology is not about social problems. In fact, generally, some students also say like this, right? Social work. They confuse sociology with some NGO type work. Okay, that is, they help address social problems. That is what people from social work do. Sociologists don't do that. Right? Even though a sociologist can tell you something critical about a social problem, it is not the case that sociology is purely concerned with social problems. That is, they study only social problems. No, it's not like that. Neither is it the case that social problems are the main focus of sociology. No, even that is not the case. All right? Human behavior. Human behavior is said to have two components. Human behavior is said to have two components.
One is the domain of psychology, the other is the domain of sociology. Now, how do you differentiate between these domains? Some part of your human behavior is actually a product of some psychological urges, psychological drives. All right? They are somewhere hidden in your subconscious memory. They are predispositions. They are involuntary to some extent. You cannot do a great deal about these things. Now, some part of your human behavior is learned. So, better way to speak about the relationship between human behavior and sociology is to speak about learnt behavior, learnt human behavior. Sociology is concerned with an analysis of learnt human behavior. Many times we believe that somehow we are all very free, creative people with our own minds, and we have the freedom to do things the way we want, right? But on a closer reading of the situation, on a closer analysis, we find that most of us are actually products of our environment. We are all products of our environment. Our likes, our dislikes, the way we behave, the way we dress, the tastes that we have, all right? These are all actually products of our environment. We learn it from our environment. For example, how does sex become gender? Sociologists speak about two concepts. Sociologists speak about two concepts. One is called sex, the other is gender. For example, just to understand this point, this is biological. That is, in terms of your biological constitution, you can speak about, say, a male and a female. Of course, there are intersex variations in between, but let us not complicate. You can speak about male and female. Male, female. This is simply biological. Male, female. How does a biological sex become a social role? That is, how does this male become masculine and how does this female become feminine? This is the process of social learning. Why is it that no man has turned up to class today wearing a sari? Why does it appear so weird and unnatural? Is it really unnatural? No, right? Just a piece of cloth. Because we have internalized the rules of our society, because we have learnt the rules of our society, our human behavior is molded in terms of certain predetermined rules. Men are supposed to be in certain way, women are supposed to be in certain way. There is nothing natural about it. Natural part is this. That is, there is certain amount of progesterone, testosterone, this, that, whatever. But in terms of your behavior, how did this sort of behavior get imposed on this sort of biological entity? That is the process of social learning. That is the process of social learning. And this social learning is a continuous process. This social learning is a continuous process, and in sociology, This process of social learning is called socialization. It is called socialization. The process of socialization is all about internalization of the rules of your society within your consciousness, so that nobody has to tell you again and again. Once the rules of the society are internalized, the rules of the environment are internalized in your mind, you automatically act, you automatically conform to what? The norms of the society. The rules that have been internalized in your mind are called the norms of the society. Norm comes from normal. Social norm. What is considered normal in a particular society? There is nothing naturally normal about it. It is just a product of that society's rules. I'm not using the word culture because the word culture has a different connotation. We'll look at it. Social norms. ये एक है. Then, is it the case that all of you are like pre-programmed machines? It's not, right? It's not as if you have learned some rules and you are just like in a pre-programmed way doing this or that, doing this or that. Okay? It's not like that, right? You also have some creativity. You can also think. You can think meaningfully. You can attach meanings to various things. So and so is good, so and so is bad. This is moral, this is immoral. This is beautiful, this is ugly. Okay, this is desirable, this is undesirable. You also have your own power to discriminate between options that are available to you. Right? So, while on the one hand, human behavior is a product of the social rules that are internalized within your consciousness, at the same time, there is some scope for you to act meaningfully. Otherwise, societies wouldn't change, right? Why would societies change otherwise? If you are simply acting according to the rules of the society, everybody is similar, there won't be any diversity, there won't be any change, right? Isn't that the case? So, a very popular sociologist by name Peter Berger described sociology as the study of sociology is the study of man in society and society in man. A very simple line, but I have always as a student found this line from this book, Sociology, a Humanistic Introduction. That's the name of the book. It's a classic. I found this line quite interesting and it has stayed with me ever since my graduation days when I read this. What does this convey? It conveys that, suppose, before that, just a disclaimer. The olden days, they used to write this way. Man is that, man is this, man must conquer the world. Like, what they mean is humans, okay? Okay, but there's the way of writing is like this. It's a gendered way of writing. We will come to this later. When we do feminist theories, we'll understand what is the significance of writing like this. So, he said that sociology is the study of man in society and society in man, which means that there is some external society which has certain rules, regulations, whatever, and there is a man here. Now, if he has to live in this society, he must internalize the rules of this society and live according to these rules. Okay? This process of internalization creates a society inside this man's head. How is this human being who has a free will, that is the ability to think? He has a free will, the ability to think and act according to his or her own thoughts. How is this human being learning the social rules while at the same time retaining his freedom to think and act and negotiating this external society? That is what sociology studies. To put it another way, sociology studies what is the nature of this external social world, nature of this external social world, all right. What is the process of this internalization? Process of internalization. Third, how an actor with free will reconciles his or herself with society or with social rules. I'm just avoiding a lot of words such as structure, institution and all this. We will come to that. How an actor with free will reconciles the self with social rules, and how all these processes lead to social order. Social order. Interesting idea. We don't live in a haphazard society. It's not random. Things are not random. There is an order out there. There is an order out there. Just as a molecule has a structure, a society also has a structure. There is some order out there. To study this order, it's not enough to study it from one person's point of view. Even though every individual who is part of that order has some idea of what this order is. Are you able to follow me? Because we are all living in this society, we have an idea as to what kind of society we are living in, right? Because we are all somehow successfully or less successfully negotiating this society. We know what this society is about. But what is the total order? What is the total order of this society? Are there some defining principles of this order? Sociology studies that. Sociology, hence, we can say, is the study of social order. Sociology is the study of social order. There is an order out there. To know this order will tell you why your life is the way it is. Right? In our pre-course, I think, okay, it's not given here, the syllabus copy. There is a day when we are going to discuss living in an unequal world. We live in an unequal world, isn't it? How many of you have, in the last 1 week, had personal experience of inequality in your daily lives? Don't be shy, all of you. You have? Sorry? Yeah, how did you, if you want to share, you want to share?
When I coming across the road, I felt sweat.
Yeah.
Going in car.
Very good. Excellent. 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 Yes, that's a real example of experience of inequality. But why is that the case? Have you asked yourself? Yeah, why?
Because of social order, the social stratification.
Hmm.
Because by birth I belong to middle class.
Hmm.
My parents can't afford to buy a car for me
Yeah.
because the rich fellow who traveling in the car, he can afford.
Yeah.
This
It's not your fault, right?
that is not our fault.
It's not as if you have some less IQ or you are less hardworking. It's not that. We live in circumstances which are not our own making. We are forced into living in certain circumstances. We are forced into living in certain circumstances. You have not chosen to be like this. No choice was given to you. So, an analysis of social order tells you how your destiny is pre-decided. Sorry to say. There's a lot of hope and enthusiasm. I don't want to discourage young students, but by the end of this course, if at all you attend, I would like to convince you that a lot will not change. Okay? A lot will not change and a lot will not change easily. We are all making a almost Himalayan attempt to change our circumstances by finding our name in that coveted PDF. And you all imagine that life will be all roses after that. We are all making that attempt. We all have that desire to change our circumstances, but I don't know how appropriate it is to tell young students, but a lot will not change. Alright? Because your destinies are determined by the social order. Your destinies are pre-written. They are determined by the social order. Study of social order tells you what this individual can or cannot do. So the interaction of individual with social order is the focus of sociology. Not just a mechanical analysis of what is the order. No. The interaction of this individual with social order. But why should you study this interaction of individual with social order? Why? Because the individual has the power and potential through collective action to change this social order. Individuals with have the power and potential through collective action to change this social order. To change this social order. They can come together and alter this social order through collective action. Through conflict, they can come together and change this social order. They can alter the power relations. They can alter the stratification system, a word that our friend used. They can alter it. Famous German, the most famous German of the last 200 years, Karl Marx. The most consequential thinker for 20th century. So many people died. Marxism, thisism, that. He famously wrote in his Communist Manifesto, "We have nothing to lose but our chains." He's telling these people whose destinies are pre-written by the types of economic systems that predetermine social order, that you have nothing to lose but chains. Come together and change this social order. That is what he's saying. It's part of our syllabus. Okay. Individuals have the power to come together and change this society. So sociology is not only about social order, it is also about social change. When you walk out of this class and someone asks you what is sociology, tell them sociology is the study of social order and social change. Okay, sociology is the study of social order and social change, not social problems. Sociologists get offended when you say that sociology study social order. No, this is for lesser minds to do. Why is there alcoholism in a particular society? Huh? Why is there this problem, that problem? Even though they write this or that about these social problems, they don't study social problems. It's not our job to study social problems. It's not your job to study social problems as sociology students. Your job is to analyze social order and social change. Your job is to analyze social order and social change. Okay? Right.